Okay, I'm going to call to order the Thursday, April 18th, 2019 regular meeting of the Granada Community Services District Board of Directors. We had a special meeting earlier, a closed session in which,
There were no reportable actions, Mr.
thank
President.
you, as far as and so we will start now with the roll call for this meeting.
President Matthew Clark.
Here.
Vice President Barbara Dye.
Here.
Director Jim Blanchard.
Here.
Director David Teague.
Here.
Director Eric Supranell.
Here.
At the table is General Manager Chuck Dudley, our legal counsel Bill Parkin, and I'm the Assistant General Manager Julia Candido.
All right, thank you. We will start with, as usual, with general public participation. Anyone who would like to speak on items not on the agenda, and I have a couple of speaker slips, and please try to keep it to 3 minutes. Rosemary Trujillo.
Thank you. I'm Rosemary Trujillo. I live in El Granada, and I just wanted to go through some follow-up with you folks. Last meeting we attended, you had asked that we go back to the county and try to get their determination on ownership of the median strip. We did receive that, and so I wanted to share that so that the board has it of record, and I'll give you all the there's their final response, and then there's the full letter, and then
Thank you.
So with that you have, the county has advised that they are not the owners of the median strip. And we, if you look at the letter that was presented to them, we had expressed the opinion of Mr. Parkin and also the other firm that you had secured. And their position is, no, the county does not own median strips. So with that, again, I am asking that the board discontinue any median strip development, since it would really unfairly penalize the adjacent property owners. And you've heard the arguments against development from adjacent property owners, me being one of them, and a number of other folks that have attended. It's a disclosure issue. It's also a personal liability issue. So again, I'd like you to consider that and not move forward on any of the median strip development. In addition to the median strip development, I personally have some question about the due diligence that was done to determine if the county actually was within its right to grant a use permit for park development. Easements are generally to be used for their purpose. That doesn't mean they can't be changed, but the changing has to be a reasonable use. And so even though they changed it, I would expect if there's argument about that and whether it was reasonable use, it would be a judge that would determine that. And given the issue we have with subjecting the adjacent property owners to liability, in addition to the question about the safety of the area for parks, it's questionable whether that would be reasonable use of median strips. So with that, again, I'd like your consideration to discontinue any consideration of using median strips for parks. Thank you.
Ms. Trujillo, this single sheet, response from Brian Wong at the county, that's all that you got in response?
And here's the letter. It's a letter here.
Okay.
That are concerns.
So you,
Yeah.
you
Sorry,
got
we
more.
only printed one.
And we're not allowed to respond to comments
Right.
tonight. Right?
So, and that, just so you know, he did forward that to council.
Well, I was going to respond, but I would need to read this now, so.
Yeah.
I-
So
So I will not.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that.
No,
You're not supposed to respond?
no, you have to rule it all.
You sure?
Yeah.
You can have, a brief response, but you can't get into a discussion.
And you can't make any decisions.
You definitely can't make a decision, yes.
It's mostly points of information.
Yes.
All right, and up next is Jane Praysilver.
Just wanted to add one last comment. I think one of the things we try to do when we come here is let you know what's going on the ground in the neighborhood. And because there's this unclarity about who owns the medians, and in my case, it's the creek, I just wanted to let you know what goes on the creek. One of my neighbors is very happy about that. So whenever anyone's walking on her part of the creek, she calls the police. She brings out the forms that she has that says she's the property owner, and then the policeman or the sheriff issues a trespassing notice to the person on the property. If it happens repeatedly, then it escalates. And so I think, just want you to be aware that when there's this vagueness, then the first responders have to be the people on the ground doing the deciding on who has rightful passage or who owns the property. So just an awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll now move to item number 1, which is consideration of a request for refund of permit fees for excess sewer capacity at APN 048-033-110, owned by the Matthews over in West Miramar. So I'm not quite sure how to start this, but we do have a speaker request set on this item, so Judy Taylor? Please have your say.
Hi. I was just looking around, and I don't think there is anyone here that was involved in Granada Sanitary District when this event occurred. So I wanted to give you all some background, if that would, and the history, if that is relevant. If you guys are ready to approve it, then we don't need to talk. But there is a question about the transfer fees, so I would like to address that. Granada went into a sewer moratorium in 1985, and it was some years before there was sewer capacity. And lots of people were trying to find different ways to create capacity because there was a desire to build. And there was a provision in the original LCP, policy 2.8C, that allowed, back up again, when this combined sewer plant was approved, they took the number of connections that would be created and allocated it between the districts. And there was another point here. Lost my train of thought there. I apologize. This is old history. Anyways, at the time, there was a lot of concern about how the coast was going to develop, how fast it was going to develop, and there was a concern about keeping capacity in reserves for those future uses. The Coastal Commission, when the plant was approved, when the original plant was approved, that was phase 1 of sewer. You hear about phase 1 water permits, that was phase 1 of sewer. And then the plant was expanded. And that expansion is what is providing capacity today. When the original LCP was done and when the original plant was built, there was a split between priority and non-priority capacity. And that was so that there wouldn't be massive infrastructure and the push to develop before the community could absorb the growth. So priority land uses were visitor serving, marine related, and the density reducing inshore acres. They downzoned those properties from 5,000 to 10,000 feet, and so the trade-off was priority capacity. The Coastal Commission recognized that there wouldn't be the same demand for the priority capacity as there would be for the non-priority. So policy 2.8C was put in that allowed for the reallocation of priority to non-priority capacity. After litigation, the district and the litigants came up with this policy to transfer the capacity. So in Princeton was the main source of these permits at the time. So people would transfer from Princeton to a residential property, and then when the plant was expanded, that capacity would come back to that Princeton lot. So the issue here tonight is the transfer fee. I mean, I think the permit fee is pretty clear. And the reason that they were required to buy so much capacity was, at the time, there was real concern that a lot of capacity was going to be used up for uses that weren't necessarily the uses that the community wanted. And though this is a bed and breakfast, a visitor-serving land use, there's two parts to the priority capacity requirement. One is the zoning, the geography, and the other is the use. So you cannot get priority capacity for a home in Princeton, and this property is zoned R1, not the visitor-serving capacity, and so they weren't allowed to access the priority pool for that. So as we were going through all of this, there was concern, and there was a lot of heartburn, frankly, about the Beach House Inn across the highway here. And so the requirement was made that each room in a bed and breakfast type establishment, hotel, whatever, would have to have its own connection. Then in addition to that, there was concern that capacity was being used before the plant, and the way that the assessment district was set up, those people would escape the assessment, so they were basically borrowing the future capacity but not paying for it. And so that's what the transfer fee was about. And so the Matthews have been paying for, what is it, 15, 18 years?
1995, 96.
No, okay, so they've been paying for 23 years. They've been paying the sewer, the annual charge for 4 connections and never using more than 2. They paid the original price for the permits plus the transfer fee, and there was a private arrangement made between the property owners. That is sunk cost. That's just lost money. But, you know, I'm an indirect rate payer in Granada, and I do believe that it's appropriate to refund them their capacity, to refund the transfer fees. They're not asking for a refund of any of those annual charges. And no adjustment for inflation or any of that sort of thing. And as a ratepayer, I think that that's a fair and right thing to do. Now, I know that one of the things in the staff report said something about deed restricting the property so that they couldn't reacquire this capacity in the future, and I think everybody would be totally fine with that. I don't think that would be an issue at all. So, that's the history lesson for tonight. Anybody want a quiz?
I fail.
Actually, can I just add something? One thing that Judy said or misspoke actually is that based on district code, we actually charge them, because it's considered a commercial business,
Right.
we charge them based on volume of water. So
Oh,
they're
so
not
they're
charged
okay.
extra for.
Then I didn't
yeah,
speak,
okay.
I misspoke.
Okay, I think we ought to ask council to give us a rundown on where we are in our code and how we can approach this.
Well, there is a legal memo in your packet, I think you saw that, and, you know, this is, in our view, discretion of the board. It seems to me that, you know, one of the suggestions I have for dealing with this issue is if you decide you want to grant this request, that you have us draft a resolution that sets forth the, what you're approving, what exactly you're approving, and conditions. So for instance, if the bed and breakfast were to resume or begin to, you know, flourish there and the numbers go up, that they would then have to, you know, reapply and pay for those, you know, the additional usage of water. So that's one way to handle it, I think. If you decide, again, it's at your discretion about what you want to do. You could say no. You don't have to grant this request. But if you do grant it, we recommend that you direct us to work with staff and draft a resolution memorializing it and conditioning it.
My question on that is, how do we make this, suppose the Matthews decide they're tired of the fog, they sell after we do whatever we're about to do. Can we make that restriction follow the property or the permits, that if anyone wants to establish a bed and breakfast there again, beyond the Matthews,
Right.
the same restriction applies to have to buy more capacity?
Well, I think, the resolution would set forth that there was a refund, and that's a condition if you wanted it to be something that was recorded. I'd certainly look into that, of course. If the property owner agrees to it, then it's, agrees to allow it to be recorded, and it's not an issue. But we can certainly consider whether or not we could ask for that to be recorded against the property. So at least the new property owner would be on notice that.
But they'd have to, you're saying they'd have to buy that even if they weren't gonna be using any more capacity, even if they were buying it and gonna be using the same projected capacity? Because that could be potentially, if you looked at it, if you were the owner of it, it'd make it difficult to sell, because anyone buying it would have the political risk of have to valuing this business based on if they could, go through the process of getting 2 more RUs.
Right.
They just have to pay.
Right.
Yeah,
It's not saying they-
Yeah, but for somebody that hasn't, makes it more complicated. It's not just the money, it's the
The
complication.
district engineer in the 90s just read the standard sources and said, this is a proposed 5-unit B&B. You gotta have more capacity. And so,
Yeah.
if someone wanted to, and it's my understanding that the Matthews have not run the B&B business at high capacity like ever. But, would you say that's true? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I can't work that hard.
Yeah, okay. So if someone wanted to buy the property, knowing that they had this opportunity to do it as a B&B, they'd have to recognize that they'd have to buy more capacity as well.
So
Yeah.
the deed restriction or the resolution that would be attached to the title of the property would basically say, if you wanna buy this as a house, fine, you're all golden. If you wanna transform it now from a house to a B&B, you'd have to apply to the district. They would do their due diligence, call us up and say, we're doing a B&B, what would be our assessment? We tell them, and then they can make an informed decision.
I just wanna say one thing about this, though.
Please adjust the microphone.
Oh, do I have to?
Yes.
Otherwise, make sure you capture it.
I'm a green guy, see, but I don't look at, I just wanna tell you that house is so efficient that you can't use much more water, because one time I put 66 rooms, right? And I still only use under the capacity of 6,000 to 8,000 gallons. So I pat myself on the back. So it's really green. You gotta see the place. Toilet, signs, everything. Okay, I
All right, thank you.
And this, just a clarification, and this only affects this fee and the potential to use more water. It doesn't, they're paying their current fees and would continue to pay their water fees based on their usage. So we're not.
Sewer service fees.
Their sewer service fees, yes, based on their use.
Water use.
So we're just reducing the potential for them to use more water.
And I wouldn't wanna use more.
Okay, I
What-
understand, I'm hearing you, I like your green face.
Do we have a procedure to switch them back from commercial billing to residential ERU billing?
Well, if we change the condition of the permit, certainly, because they'll be reapplying to us to some extent for a permit, so.
But you do use it some as a B&B.
I'd say the max, you gotta go by capacity. Now, I love people, right? But I do overwork myself. So the max capacity of up to 4 rooms is, the max capacity I've ever had is like 35%. And that's working the tush. And I don't like to hire people, so I'm the only show in town, so I do it all myself. So you multiply that out. And last month, there were a few people, so it came to, I think the water bill was 2,600 gallons. So that's still paying 15 years. Because, the people, I don't like to be, especially if there's signs conserve water in the yard, but my house has low flush toilets.
I I mean, it's kind of an outdated concept, because there's people probably in, other parts that are living in a single-family home and Airbnb all 4 of their rooms, and essentially operating and no one's checking their capacity,
Well, I wouldn't assess this at 4 ERUs today.
But my only concern though is that if I was a property owner, just as far as full disclosure, to get $10,000 back in your pocket now and then potentially go and sell it and have that deed restriction, that's gonna cost more than $10,000, because that potential future buyer is gonna know that they have to pay that fee, plus they're gonna tack on all of these inconvenience and risk factors of dealing with the, and so from that perspective, I would almost say, why would you, that wouldn't make, if they're for it, that's, I guess, then that's fine, but I would just think that,
Well, that's a buyer's informed decision,
Yeah,
right? Eyes
yeah.
wide open, due diligence.
They're
guess
here
so.
asking for it,
yeah,
and they don't object to the deed restriction.
Right.
So,
okay, so.
You don't
as
mind
long-
the
As long
deed
as they're
restriction?
aware of that.
You have to tell.
A deed restriction is fine. To me, it seems almost overkill. I mean, it's permitted right now as a 4 or 5 room bed and breakfast. It's operating that way. You guys are collecting fees that way. The county is collecting TOT and all of that. So, to change the use requires a use permit. Anytime you get a use permit, you guys see the paperwork. So I don't really think that a deed restriction is necessary. Certainly in agreement, but with any property, you know that if you're gonna expand or contract the use, there's gonna be permit issues, and you may be required to buy additional capacity. So I appreciate and thank you for bringing
Yeah.
that up, but in this particular situation, if you were running a restaurant and there was a limit on capacity and you needed to make sure that you could run your brewery or whatever, in the back room, it would be a bigger issue, but I just don't see it so much as one for this.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I think that the deed restriction is necessary because Matthews could decide to sell. They could get a purchaser who's gung-ho on running B&B and has it full 360 days a year. They're going to be using more than two ERUs. And then the restriction doesn't say you can't get more ERUs. It just says that when you get past the capacity that you already have, if you so choose to run a business like that, you have to buy more capacity.
That
So,
makes sense.
yeah. It's true that we have a 15-year water use record here, that the water use has been way under what 4 ERUs are, even though it's a commercial account. But that would not necessarily stay the same if it changed hands. So I think we have to be ready for that.
Well, I move that we refund the transfer fee to the Matthews if they will provide a recorded irrevocable binding restriction precluding further development of the property beyond a use requiring more than 2 ERUs.
Yeah, I think we should refund the 90% of the original cost and as per the ordinance, and 90% of the transfer fees at our discretion. That's my opinion.
Okay, I think my motion was only to refund the transfer fee. You're saying in addition to refund something additional?
Yeah, they want to essentially sell us back 2 ERUs. And so that has value that, so.
To help understand that the transfer fee was equivalent to the contingent assessment
Yeah.
at the time.
So the motion would be, if we're in agreement to do this, that move approval of refunding the transfer fee and repurchasing the sewer connection charges.
So Delia, what exactly would we be refunding
Yeah.
then from your memory?
Okay, well, the transfer fee,
Excuse
I
me,
believe
I'm
is.
talking about the not the current connection fee, but
The contingent
what they
assessment.
paid at the time.
Right.
Yes.
Right, what they paid at the time, what you're calling, I believe, a transfer fee was actually called an assessment reduction fee.
No, I'm talking about the first two ERUs that they bought, and then they bought two more, and they
Right.
paid for those ERUs as
Right.
well as what is in reality the transfer fee.
Right, the first permit, they paid just a connection fee for the two capacity units, which was the $10,800. And then the price went up a little bit for the connections, because the two more connections 2 years later was $12,172. And then the ARF, which was the assessment reduction fee, which I believe is what you're considering the transfer fee, was the same as our contingent assessment fee as it is today, which
Right.
is the $8,371.36, and for two, it was the $16,742.72. So if you just refund the ARF at 90%, it would be the $15,068.44 total refund. If you wanted to also refund 90% of the two connection fees, the later two of the connection fees, that would be $10,954. So the total would be $26,023.
That's on page 13
Yeah.
of the agenda.
Right.
Which
So
means,
is that your
which means
motion, Barbara,
essen-
to do both?
which means essentially what they paid for two
Please, sir.
connections would be
Well,
13.
This is not very clear in the report here, because it looks as if the repurchase price would be $8,460.
I'm sorry, where are you getting that number?
I'm getting it under law applicable to sewer connection clauses, and I don't have any page numbers on the legal analysis. So, so are we looking at this page?
I was looking at, that sheet, at the top.
Page 13, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of numbers, I mean,
Just the numbers that say historical water use have nothing to do with the permit.
26,023.24.
Yeah, it's just the top, the little corner there.
If you want to refund the ARP and the connection fee, the 90% of that, that's at 26,023.24 in the upper left of page 13.
but why, under the legal analysis, does it say literal application of subsection 70108B would result in a repurchase price of $8,460?
He's referring to buyback, assessment buyback, which I don't know that is applicable here because there was no assessment. It wasn't assessed through the assessment. I didn't notice that.
I'm reading the staff report, I've been through it a few times,
Hold on just a
and
second.
here it says their purchase price of $10,900, all right, so that's here.
Yeah. I'm not sure where what page this is on. Phil, do you know where she's referencing on the?
Page 15 in the middle of the bottom of the first, or right in the middle of the page.
Yeah.
Jonathan is suggesting refunding the current
Oh, I see.
connection fee, not what they paid.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah, I don't see where,
I see what she's saying.
the flexibility to do that, where that's in the code, but Jonathan says it's there.
Well, this could be why Jonathan retired, so let's check quickly.
So instead of the $10,954.80, it would be $8,460? According to this analysis? I'm just trying to reconcile these two sets of
It
numbers.
says literal application would result in the repurchase price of $84.60 since the current sewer connection charge was $4,700, right, times 90%. That's based on the current connection fee, which, the connection fee was, back then, I think it changed, it was different at some point. Because he's using today's connection fee. The connection fee, let's see here. I'd have to figure out what the fee was, 5,000, it's 5,400 was the connection fee for the first permit. And then, let's see, the second permit was 6,000 something. So it is slightly, the fees are different now than they are than they were then. In fact, they've gone down. So our current connection fee is less now than it was when he bought the second permit.
So what Jonathan is doing on the district code, he's going in 70108B. And B says the price to be, upon mutual consent of the district and the property owner, may be repurchased by the district subject to the following conditions. And B is the price to be paid by the district shall be 90% of the sewer connection charge rate in effect at the time the repurchase occurs.
So that's now.
And so it's,
That's now.
and it's the repurchase of the second set, the more recent,
So the real issue here is.
permit number 2615 versus.
Even though they
25.
paid, whatever that number is, $5,500 for a connection fee back then, the current connection fee is $4,700. So they would get 2 ERUs, 9,400 times the 90%.
Right.
So-
Okay, I don't feel strongly which way it is. And then
Well-
the other, is there the same discrepancy in terms of calculating the 90% of the ARF? Because it's 15,068.
No, because the ARF is not subject, this is the connection fee,
Yeah.
the ARF
So
is the
that's-
ARF and
that's a
doesn't
sub
exist
fee.
anymore.
If we approve this, that is definite, 15,068, and we're just trying to decide what the amount is of the connection fee. Right?
Yes, correct. So it'd be plus 9,400
Yeah.
Which way do people
times
want to do it?
0.9, so it's 8,460 rather than 10,954.
Right, and that's what's in the memo.
8,460 in Jonathan's memo.
Mhm.
Right. So Jonathan's point is, if you take, that's the reason he used the word, the literal interpretation of the ordinance code, that is the literal interpretation of the ordinance code. So I'd suggest that you stay with the literal interpretation
All right,
of the
so
ordinance
my
code.
motion is to refund 90% of the current connection fee, which would be 8460, and 90% of the ARF at 15,068.44.
Bill
No?
Bill has a.
And I'm gonna suggest that your motion be, this be the direction, and then the next meeting we'll come back with a resolution
Okay.
that specifically memorializes this, so that we're absolutely clear about the calculations.
Okay.
And again, imposes those conditions,
Right,
so you can see the conditions and have them in front of you when you vote on it.
yes, my mission also included if the Matthews provider recorded irrevocable, but this is just direction, finding
Right,
restriction.
right. And that
Are
will
you
be-
okay with that? Okay, good. Seems, just trying to get it straight.
So to summarize the motion, then there'll be three parts to it. We'll refund the connection fee in the amount of $84.60, the ARF in the amount of $15,068.44. We will direct Bill to come back with a resolution memorializing that, and he will also come back with a deed restriction on the title.
Everybody good? Yeah. All right, then that's the.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously?
Want to go out some wine now?
Oh, bring me one.
Absolutely.
You gotta come back.
Yeah,
Tomorrow?
but, you know, don't burn up all that refund at once.
I listen, no problem. Well, thank you, gentlemen. You're the greatest. You want to run this board, too?
Oh,
See you later.
Good night.
yeah.
Thank you for understanding me.
Good.
See you later.
I'm going to interject here a moment because I forgot a general public participation to announce the local drop-off, our quarterly drop-off event that Recology helps the district with over here at Obispo Road, but across from the post office is this Saturday.
No, it's next, it's the week after.
Oh,
Yeah.
Saturday the 27th, excuse me, at 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., and it's free disposal. There are no charges. You have to have ID proving that you live in the district, and they will accept everything from large appliances one at a time to unpainted wood, yard waste, et cetera. And these notices are posted around and are also on the website, and
Or
so.
will be on the website. I just want to mention that the one small change is that the gentleman that runs it for Recology had asked if people can limit their furniture recyclables to one large item per, because they're getting too filled up with lots of old furniture, so that's a small change.
Okay, now we will move to item number 2 on the action agenda. Consideration to approve Class 3 mainline extension permit to serve, well, Big Wave LLC over there in Princeton, associated resolution and joint subdivision agreement.
So this is our standard class 3 mainline extension permit for Big Wave. This one is more complicated than most because it's Big Wave, so there's a lot of moving hoops we've had to jump through. But the long and short of it is that John Rayner has reviewed their plans and has stamped them as okay, so we're going to go ahead with this. There is a legal aspect, which I'll let Bill talk about briefly here, but just from an engineering standpoint and what they put down in front of us, we're okay with it. So Bill has been talking with Big Wave in the county about exactly what?
Yeah, there's the joint subdivision improvement agreement that is attached to the resolution that I prepared. And the reason we memorialize this in the resolution is because we wanted to ensure two things. One is that the joint subdivision improvement agreement is executed. That was a condition of everything moving forward. And the second thing is that this is an approval of the main line extension, but not to the individual connections. So by this action tonight, we're making it clear that the future owners or tenants of Big Wave need to connect individually to the main line extension. So that's why you have the resolution in front of you. One wrinkle today that happened is that from council for Big Wave, we got changes to the subdivision improvement agreement that is attached to this resolution, striking one paragraph that has to do with county improvements. It doesn't really affect, GCSD, but I want to ensure that, and I checked with county council today and they're still working it out, I want to ensure that whatever we're approving, the county's okay with. So this agreement is basically the agreement, but there may be minor changes to it, and I just, subject to the county being okay with it. And that's the only change I have for you to the recommendation, is that you approve the resolution, but you give me the flexibility to ensure that the final form will be in basically substantially the same form that's attached to this resolution, but the final form may be slightly modified to deal with some issues between Big Wave and the county.
Should we put this off for a month?
You can certainly do that. I can tell you that the changes have to do with, and again, these came up today. The changes have to do with on page. They have to do with the estimate of costs, and we had some minor changes to the numbers. And the other one is section 12 on page 38 of your packet. They're striking that because they say that's no longer relevant. That's a determination for the county in my view. And so you can certainly continue this item, and you could reconsider it again at your next meeting, and then we can have what is the final form of the subdivision improvement agreement. That's certainly an option for you. Or again, the changes are minor in nature, but again, and they only affect the county. So if the county's satisfied, we are satisfied, but it still hasn't been resolved as of my last check of my emails.
So number 12, they're proposing to remove the emergency access route and stormwater drainage
Yeah,
basin?
for whatever reason, they're saying that's no longer relevant, and again, that's not GCSD's issue, but the county council has to check on that, and I'm uncertain as to whether that's true or not, but it's, again, not a GCSD issue, but I wouldn't want this board approving an agreement that, the county isn't fully okay with.
And you said the county hasn't actually resolved this finally. It's,
No, the last, and I just checked my emails again, and I didn't see anything new. Last I checked, they were still trying to confirm, the issue regarding section 12.
Seems cleaner to wait a month.
I think so,
I'd be more comfortable if we waited a month.
That's
One
fine.
a month,
yeah.
All right.
it's easy.
Make sure we
So
know
we'll
exactly.
Wait,
what's
wait a
going on.
month, or wait a month, or wait until this is resolved, because how long could this, you
Yeah,
know,
that's a-
working with the county?
That's
they
an
can't-
excellent point. I mean, if it's not resolved by the next meeting, we just would.
We'll just
we'll
table it until the
until-
county resolves it in
yeah.
a big way.
Well, you
But-
can inform us when it's ripe,
Yes.
yeah, and we'll
Yeah.
put it back on.
That's
Okay.
Good.
All right.
It's
And,
good
you know, I
waiting.
apologize, but it literally it showed up in my email this morning.
The county did that to you?
No, not the county.
No, Big Wave.
Big Wave. did
Oh, the
that.
big wave. Ah.
Bill
Yeah.
told me, yeah, they struck a whole section. I'm like, who does that?
Who did?
Yeah,
Big Wave.
and it's an emergency access route.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Yeah. Okay, so we will table till it's resolved by the county and Big Wave.
All right, we will move to item number 3, consideration to create Parks and Recreation staff position. Celia wrote a, she over there?
Yes.
A very well explanatory memo here, and perhaps you'd like to start this off.
Okay, well, this request for this item was made by the board, pondering, you know, the need for another staff person. Obviously, I'm doing 2 jobs, if not more, when you add the parks responsibilities, which have gotten rather burdensome. And, you know, when there's time issue, you know, they're time sensitive, it's difficult for me to have to sit down my other responsibilities to address the park. So, you know, I think everyone realized at some point in the future that the time would come when an employee would be needed, whether or not it really is full-time work. But the issue is really how, you know, I think park deserves the attention of someone, 100% attention, and I can't give it 100% of my attention, so which is the problem. So I just wanted to kind of fill out in this memo what it is that I've been doing for the parks side of the district, and also provided my job responsibilities as, without the park side of it, just as the assistant general manager, and what we do here in the office. So I think we've provided Genevieve's, the assistant administrator's duties as well, so, which I oversee her duties, and it's definitely a full-time job already. So it's just a matter of whether or not the board feels now is the time, or if you want to wait a little bit longer. There are some things pending right now that I don't really have time to address, but I'm doing as much as I can. And so it's really going to be up to the board what you'd like to do. If you think that, you know, we could get someone has expressed some interest in working for us. I don't know her qualifications per se, or what she's willing to do as far as working full-time versus part-time, or how much she's interested in earning. But, you know, we may have someone out there who might be willing to step in and do what we need, or we could look at it for contract worker or something like that. I know that it was mentioned also, possibility of finding an intern. Pat Tierney, who was the past PAC chair, working for the University of San Francisco, has contacts where he might be able to bring in, you know, a student who might be willing to do some work for us. So I'm not sure how to go about, you know, getting someone, but I know that we could, you know, put our feelers out and do whatever you feel is necessary to address the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that idea, just because I feel like they've done so much legwork, and they're such a valuable resource that, you know, when I was in college, one of my best experiences was a grant with the city of National City and San Diego State, where they're business consulting with all these local small businesses. And it was amazing how a little bit of money put up by the city was leveraged by hundreds of students working and all that. And so I feel like the value would be so tremendous in terms of any small amount of money that we could put up, for what we would get, you know, on the back end as far as, you know, what he's already kind of done, you know, by tapping into the university resources, we'd be, you know, able to get that much more by putting up some funding for it. And I feel like until we're at that point where we need the management side of it, when it starts getting, to that point, I think, to me, that's a solution, going back and forth to figure out what, you know, what those numbers are and how that would work. Would it be one person, or would it be a team, or whatever, you know, or rotating? I would, you know, let's explore and see what they have in mind.
Well, the other issue too is who will train the person. A contractor might be more inclined to be independently working and have experience in the area where, you know, oversight isn't needed so much. If we brought someone in, you know, as an intern or as a part-time worker, there would probably be some training involved, and of course, you can't guarantee someone would stick around. So, you know, how long, you know, it'd be nice to have someone trained that would stay and, you know, not have to go through that again. But, you know, I have limited abilities to train someone because I don't have the park experience. I can only train them for what I've done and what I know, and how, you know, what's required for the PAC side of it in terms of, you know, attending the meetings and setting up agendas and stuff like that. But I can't give anybody really any real training or advice on, you know, what other tasks the board might want of someone in that position, relating to, you know, outreach, or, you know, working with the county, or all the other avenues that there could be, you know, the other park possibilities out there. I just don't know, because I don't have that experience, so I think it's really up to the
Yeah,
board.
I mean, I'm for reaching out, you know, City of Half Moon Bay, and, you know, any other, you know, options that are on the table. I would ask, did it seem like that they were just saying, hey, we could find an intern that, you know, you guys pay?
No, it was just
or there
something
was
that
more
came
of a,
up. It
okay,
was
so it's
just-
very informal.
Yeah, it was very
Okay,
informal.
yeah, but, yeah, let's explore that and see where that could
Yeah,
take
Pat
us
had
for
brought it
sure.
up, I think, at our January meeting.
Yeah.
When we were so when we initially talked about the issue, we discussed two things. One is hiring a part-time person, the second would be hiring a consultant. Delia says he kind of knows what they're doing and get up on the ground, and that's kind of something your board's got to look at. I just want to point out Nancy Marsh, I don't know if Nancy
I saw it, yeah.
spoke to you, yeah. So she sent me an email, or Delia an email, talking about it, and she said she would rather have PAC discuss this issue a little bit more. She was disappointed that no one from PAC could be here tonight, neither Pat nor herself, because she's off to the East Coast there. So she would rather, and she's in favor of hiring a consultant at this point in time. She certainly doesn't think it's a full-time job, or maybe even a part-time job. They had also talked at the PAC level about hiring a summer recreation coordinator, and they're still looking into that. So, and she says she'd be happy to develop a brief for such a position should the board decide to move forward with it. So, we'd like to coordinate that with us. So.
Actually, at the last PAC meeting, it was a recommendation of PAC made to the board, which is addressed later in our agenda tonight under the committee reports. Nancy Marsh, who's the PAC chair, had written a very nice and detailed report on some of the discussions that took place during the last PAC meeting, one of which had to do with their recommendation about hiring staff. So that's an item number, not sure what number it is, but.
Page 227.
Okay, there it goes. So,
I'd like to hear comment from the rest of the board. Is it time?
Sure.
Are we ready?
Yep.
To bring someone in focused on Parks and Rec?
I mean, my personal thoughts, I think being still early in the process, to me, the somebody with a high level of expertise, I think I think we're still at the point where, is that what we're talking about bringing in? Or are we just talking about somebody that, you know, Delia just doesn't have enough time in the day, and that there's a lot of things that, you know, the more entry level. That's my first kind of question as far as clarification, is what level.
Well, that's the first thing your board's got to decide. Do you want to get a It's hard to get a part-time person on the coast side, obviously, that would have this experience. Now, I say that, we don't know, we haven't advertised for the position, so.
Right,
I-
well, we
I
don't
think-
have to have a permanent solution now
Right.
either.
Yeah.
Delia, do we have tasks that someone could come in and do right now?
Oh, yes, as a matter of fact, I made a list, and of course, I don't have a copy of it with me, but, there were actually quite a few, tasks that are pending that someone, could be given. To do it would be very easy just to walk in and take over. There's a lot of background and information they need to have, probably for me in order to do the work. But I can print up the list real quick while you guys talk and bring it and give it to you.
Because it seems, I think we should use Nancy's expertise as, she has an enormous background in human resources and knows a lot about it, but I'm not sure that we're ready to have a permanent solution to our park staffing needs. But it seems as if it wouldn't hurt to see if we could find somebody competent who maybe does want to come in for 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week or something, and help with some of the issues that are outstanding. There's a lot of issues about the summer program. There's just, odds and ends of parks things, and if we could move forward on some of those things, it might help us to craft a permanent position, and it would take some of the burden off Delia.
What would be the minimum number of hours a week they would need to come out in order to be efficient and effective?
We don't know those kind of things.
I'm just asking as an estimate
Yeah,
in
I don't
terms of
know,
what.
I
But-
think a couple days a week,
I
10
think-
hours, like Parker suggested. We have an extra office here that someone can use. It would require another computer for someone to use. That's, fairly minimal expense, but we could set someone up here, and, we have room to do that, so I think having someone come in a couple days a week would be helpful if, once they get going and they could take that burden or workload, and work on their own independently and get some of this stuff done and moving forward without too much of.
I think we should certainly, I agree with Barbara that we should certainly take advantage of Nancy's offer to essentially write a job description, and that would answer those kind of questions. And because between the two of them, maybe Nancy more, but certainly working with Delia, she can craft a description of what we need.
For now.
For now, right.
I
Yeah,
think
no, we
we're
all know.
grappling with something perhaps bigger, more complicated in the future, when we have more stuff going on, but there's stuff now we could get some progress, so let's.
Yes.
And if nobody applies, if nobody good comes, then we rethink. But if we have
Right.
somebody who's,
Well, and I think I
Perhaps
said
some
this back in
background
January,
is-
cast the net, see
Yeah.
what happens.
and we
Yeah.
have one person who's walked in with a resume, seems like a competent person and is very interested in doing some work here.
And I think this needs to happen before we burn out any more of the volunteers. We had quite a bit of turnover after 2 years with the PAC, because people put in a lot of time and effort. They had great ideas. For various reasons, things did not move fast. We need to get things rolling before we lose the new group.
Yeah, and I would just say that's, while we're exploring all the options and keeping everything open is have a good conversation with the university and seeing if anything can be
Yes,
leveraged
I
there.
think that's fine.
Have them at Parks and Rec, whatever other organizations are out there that we could potentially leverage to, and if nothing else, they might be able to fill in some of the gaps that a part-time person can handle everything but those last one or two things, which maybe half a Bay of Parks and Recs could do, or maybe some other, somebody else could fill that void so that we can find somebody local part-time that could do 95% of it,
Well, I think there are some tasks now that aren't really high level.
Yeah,
Just
that's more what it
liaison and
seems like.
Following up in the paperwork in the
Yeah.
summer program, and I know she mentioned ordering the banners.
Yeah.
Or something that's just fallen through the cracks for our events and so forth, so I think, oh. Well, why don't you read it? It's your list.
Well, it seems like the short term is about getting Delia help.
Yeah.
And we can leverage Nancy's expertise to get a good job description for what's needed in the next
So let's
6
try
months.
to put it out, and then, let's try to put it out in the next month and see.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Right.
thinking about where we are in 6 months. And then I mean, part of that is working with Nancy and whoever else makes sense to start really thinking about a long-term staffing plan,
Yeah.
which is what we
I agree.
need before we look to hire a consultant or a more permanent
Right.
position.
I agree.
Okay.
But you wanna just read the list? just
Yeah.
because-
So we wanna we'll work with Nancy
And I'll be happy to help.
and Pat and whoever to develop a job description and kind of look at this and flesh this out. Do you know how long they're traveling then?
It's not that long.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing is, an intern is a great idea. In some ways, an intern will work better when we're at a little later phase, because an intern can't do just like, oh, here's all this random stuff. An intern's good is you say, okay, I have this project, it's perfect for an intern. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying,
What-
well, I agree with you, it's a great idea.
I actually don't, I think an intern would not be effective, to Delia's point, as far as the turnover. Where I'm thinking, it might be a possibility, was that, like, in the model I have in my head, was one class, and there was 2 teachers. And so they were the consistency, so that every year when a new
Right. That would be great.
group of students came in, they were already first day, listen, this is what we've done.
These
this
are
is
the projects that
These
we-
are what we're gonna do this year, you know, and so that's where I feel like, yeah, if it's just
I agree.
an intern coming in, it's gonna make things more complicated. If there's a collaborative effort where we put up a good amount of money, because there are gonna be expenses, they turn it into kind of a university
agree.
curriculum.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where it's like, you know, it's win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
But, you know, obviously there's, you know, that could take a while to flush out. But I feel like, you know, I think that would be a good starting point considering how much they've done already for
And
us.
I think to Matthew's point too, it's healthy to have PAC involved, because they are
Yeah.
putting a lot of this effort, and I think Nancy kind of felt like, why is this on the agenda like this? So I think it's good to get her input. She's a smart woman, got the HR
Kind of a
background.
mistake that we,
So.
I mean, we didn't intend it to be that way.
But we
really.
didn't direct the PAC to deal
Yeah.
with staffing issues in there, so.
Right.
Okay, so just so you know, the current task list that I have for parks would be working with Bacchus Press on the newsletter and summer recreation guide, getting it, you know, printed, and I've spoken with them, but we still have to get it going here. We have communicating with the county parks department regarding the status of Quarry Park pump track and coordinating a meeting, which they've requested. 3 is finalizing the application to the Department of Justice for the district originating agency status. That's for the summer program fingerprinting requirements. Also, I need to do the minutes for the last PAC meeting. It would be nice to have someone help me with that. And of course, if someone's attending the PAC meetings, then it would be easier for them to do the minutes. We also need coordination and schedule the vegetation management on the Burnham Strip pursuant to the RCD management plan. I've spoken with the mower, but we want to, you know, ramp him up a little, have him come out more frequently, and I have to go back and look at the plan. And so having someone who's familiar with that plan and could move that forward would be nice. Anyone who could design or contract someone to design and order the outreach banners, which.
Wait, we already have a design, Marty already did.
Oh, do we?
so,
Okay.
yes, We did
Sounds
that
good.
before, but we just didn't.
I'm
have
not sure,
order them.
is it the bird one, or is that a different one?
No, it was a banner, it was.
Oh, okay.
GCSD
I'll
banner.
have to go back and
Well,
see that, because I don't remember.
That's something someone could do,
My-
they talk to her, look at it, make sure you're okay with it,
Yeah,
and then
that's
it would
what-
move forward.
My memory's gotten really bad, sorry about that. This is a good one. You know, I've been maintaining the cards at the post office. They disappear quite quickly, and a lot of times they sit there kind of empty for a while until I can get a chance to run the cards and restock that over at the post office. But every time someone takes a card, they will email me and say, I want to be put on your mailing list. Well, it started out as a newsletter mailing list, and then I started thinking, well, some of these people want to be on our agenda list, you know, so they got on the PAC agenda list, and then some of the people wanted to be on our overall GSD agenda list, and so I have these 3 lists going. And some of the, when I send out the packet or whatever it may be, some of them are bouncing, and I haven't had a chance to go back and fix the ones that are
Sounds
bouncing.
like a great job
And
for
I
a
need to
part-time person.
combine, I need to combine all the lists, I think, into one, and it's just, it would just be so much easier if someone had time to go through those lists, you know, make sure all the emails are right and combine them into one big list. I just haven't had, something I haven't had time to do.
Okay, I think that's good. We got the idea. I think
Okay.
those are reasonable tasks that someone could come in without a whole lot of background and
Right.
help with.
Yeah.
So let's try for it.
Okay, so we'll work with Nancy and
Yeah.
who else, and get moving on. Okay?
Great. And we're gonna go ahead and post something, right? That's an agreement, if we come to an agreement, what it should say? Or do you wanna see it, the posting?
Oh, I don't,
Job posting?
Yeah,
I,
I'd rather go
I-
ahead and do it.
I want to see what Nancy and you and Delia come up with for job description.
Okay, before it gets posted, do you wanna come back to the?
Before, but the posting, after that, the posting should be easy.
Right, I know, but,
Yeah,
so do you want it to come back in a month? Or
yes,
do you, okay,
if possible.
sure, we
Yes.
can get it done by then. Just- I'd like to get it done sooner.
Yeah, I think we need to move with all deliberate speed here. Okay, item number 4, consideration to approve independent contractors agreement with Weist Law Firm for bond counsel services. And boy, this was some fun reading, wasn't it?
We have a very complex assessment district, and unfortunately, the bond counsel who originally set it up for us is no longer with us. He passed away several years ago. Super smart guy. I'm a little bit too smart, I think, because if you read our bond documents, it's very difficult to understand. And our outgoing general counsel, Jonathan Whitwer, had said his #1 priority when he left was you have to get secure bond counsel, especially as we approach the year that the bonds will be paid off, which is just right around the corner in 2022. I found this particular bond counsel just through some investigation, and I ended up speaking with him for quite some time. I really liked him, and probably the best thing about him was he knew Jerry Lassner, who was our bond counsel, had passed away, and he's familiar with his documents, which is a huge step above anybody else, because that's right there means a lot. And as you can see, I've provided his credentials, which are incredible. I had hoped that our council might be familiar with him because they are from the same area, but apparently not. And he would have come here this evening, but it turns out it's his daughter's birthday, so he couldn't be here tonight. But he said he's more than happy to meet everybody at a future time. But I don't know, he's willing for me to send our bond docs, old and current, because the original bond document is relevant. The 2003 made some changes to it, and he's willing to go ahead and have me send him those documents, and he will review them. He has put a cap on the cost for doing so. I believe it was $25,000.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I don't think anybody was here at that time, but our general manager probably remembers how big our bills used to be from
I was
our
just
bond
telling
counsel.
Bill
Yeah,
that
they were
we used to pay when I got here, $175,000 a year to Jerry
a
Lassner.
lot, yeah.
To run the assessment district, so.
Well,
And we need some interpretation for how it's going to go forward after the bonds are paid off. I was under the understanding that it will continue indefinitely until our area is completely built out.
Yeah, and I've got, I won't even say some, I've got experience with assessment districts. We've got 3 down where I am, plus a mellow Bruce that I was integral in creating them, not the bond council, obviously. Yeah, Jonathan and I blunted a lot of IQ points reading Jerry's stuff. It is very difficult to read. We've actually used 2 other prior bond councils. I used Best and Krieger and a guy named Brian Forbath, and they all had the kind of the same reaction. Wow. So the thing that makes this complicated, assessment districts are pretty straightforward. It's when you add on top of it an integrated financing district, which is a more complicated thing. So the basic premise of this assessment district and integrated financing district is that it's like it almost doesn't ever go away. So in the theoretical, in theoretical, all these people who paid all these assessments over the years, we will keep collecting money after 2022. So in 2022, we'll have paid off the bonds we used to expand the treatment plant back in 1996. You would think at that point in time, the assessment district would go away, but it doesn't. Now, I dove into this, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago with Jonathan, and I can't remember, I would have to go back to my notes, but I went deep into this to figure out what the heck's gonna happen in 2022. It may be that we're collecting so little money that the administrative costs after 2022 aren't, I'll be sending out checks to $1.50 for $1.50 to 3,000 people. It won't make sense, but that's one of the things he's gonna look at for us to figure out what are the nuts and bolts of how we unravel this and what do we do after 2022. Because up till then, it's easy. We collect contingent assessments, they pay a yearly non-contingent assessment. If you pull a contingent assessment based on a permit, non-contingent is what you pay to pay down the bonds. After 2022 is where it becomes complicated, and that's what we need this guy to unravel for us. So we've got to do this, and this guy sounds well qualified for it.
And the goal is to get this insanely complicated thing to go away.
That is my goal. Jonathan never liked that goal. And that's why I said when I dove into it, it really was something, we're getting silly now, and this thing it will never end until you've paid back every dime, theoretically. And that's just, it's taking people's money, it's just not worth it. But that's what we're gonna hire this guy to tell us.
And one of the-
I'm an amateur, he's the bond counsel, so.
One of the other things that I liked about Mr. Weiss was that he was familiar with not only our past administrator, but our current, we have an assessment district administrator, and he's familiar with them. And I have some issues with the record keeping that we also need to straighten out, and he is very familiar with both NBS and Tausig, so that was a
Oh, good.
Yes, he is familiar with them. He's worked with both of them.
So Tausig does our assessment of the administration, and they're very smart people as well, so between the two of them, we should be able to figure this out. So I recommend that your board approve entering the contract with the Weiss Law Firm and kind of get this thing started.
Somebody else want to make the motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, well, yeah, it seems both
What about-
necessary and, in fact, sort of tardy.
What about their hourly rate, $4.85, with a cap of 25,000 an hour?
Well, I initially glanced at that, David, and so, we're not gonna spend all of that at once, obviously, so we're gonna start this process. When I last did this process with a bond counsel, we looked at refinancing the bonds back in 2012 or something, so we refinanced them in 2003 at a lower rate. In 2012, we went to refinance them again, and this guy went through all these gyrations and basically came back to me and said, you can't do it for this reason, because if you increase the assessment $1, it sets off this chain reaction and whatnot. So, I'm gonna use this guy. He is expensive. I talked to Bill about this beforehand, but that's what these guys go for. Bond counsel is a niche law business, and my guy down south charges $4.25, so he's not crazy out of the thing. And
Yeah.
this-
$4.25.
$4.25 an hour.
I'm just concerned that 25,000, up to 25,000 an hour, I mean, when would that even theoretically come into play?
That's not per hour, that's
No.
their not to exceed amount.
That's a total cap. My eyebrows went way up when I saw $4.85 an hour too, but the total that this can cost us is, as I understand it, is 25,000, which is for what this is going to do for us, and considering what the assessment district has cost previously, this sounds like a deal.
Yeah.
Maybe you could rewrite this to say with the cap, the total expenditures of 25,000. Because as you read here, it's true, David, right? You could read it to say that their cap is $25,000 an hour.
Should we bring in Leonard for the comment check? Comment check? It's kidding.
Right after the font check, font size check. It's so it's $485 an hour, $25,000 cap. No, obviously, yeah.
Total charges per year.
Yeah, just clarify that sentence, I guess. Yeah.
Okay?
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously, thank you. Cool. Moving along here. Item 5, discuss the provisions of the Sewer Authority Midco Side Memorandum of Understanding with the, what is it, Operating Engineers Union, Stationary Local Number 39. Anybody want to start this?
Well, I'll just give a brief background at Sam's, was it March 25th, where they approved the MOU? Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, anyway, one of the last SAM meetings, they approved the MOU. Your board had expressed concern about increased wages and whatnot, especially in conjunction with the budget, so we just wanted to give your board an overview of what the MOU looked like and what the provisions were in there. So, as explained in Delia / my memo, it was a little team effort. The big issues here are, the term of the agreement. I'm not sure it's correct or not, but
That's a typo,
yeah, the
Which is a typo.
in the term of the agreement.
yeah. So, the pay rate increase of 4.5%, 4%, 3%, and 3%. We reported on that last month. Then each job classification has this 3% step increase. Now, theoretically, that is a merit-based increase, but the reality is basically if you're doing your job and you get a satisfactory rating, which you should because you're doing your job, you're getting the 3%. As Magda from Half Moon Bay explained it to me, because I had never heard of step increases until 3 years ago. She said, basically, if you stay alive another year, you get 3%. So they've got that, and then they've also got this Y-rated employee. So once you leave the steps, after 7 years of working there, you're past the step rate increases. Once you've left the steps, even though you're not getting a step increase, you're getting a lump sum basically equal.
Actually, I met with Beverly, and that's not true. There's only one employee who's Y-rated.
And why is that?
And that is because it's a clerical job that was overpaid. And so the union agreed to reduce the salary on that, for that position. However, they did not want to penalize the person in that position. So the salary has been reduced, but this person gets this bonus to bring them up to their previous pay level, but with a reduction in benefits and pension and so forth. And when the cost of living increases, bring that salary back up to match the calculated salary, the bonus will go away. So the union said they were willing to reduce the pay, the salary for this employee, but they didn't feel that the person in that job should get a huge pay cut. So they made the difference be a bonus. And if this person leaves the job, a new person would be hired at the lower salary level, which is more appropriate for the position.
Well, that may be her explanation on that one person, but in the MOU, it states if you're past the 7 steps.
But if you're a Y rated,
If you're past the 7 steps, by definition, you're Y-rated.
And 7 steps is how many years?
7
7
years.
years.
7 years, so,
Every year,
so
yeah.
anyone working more than 7 years, and basically, I assume everyone there working, how many people are working there over 7
I
years?
think Delia said half, roughly half.
But only one of them is Y-rated?
employees and the 7 steps.
You know, how the Y rating applies to one person now, obviously, it is what it is. But in the MOU, it says if you're past the 7 steps, you're Y rated and you get 3% lump sum at the beginning of each year. So it may only apply to one person now, but as people are there longer.
Yeah, essentially the MOU.
You know, when I read through the MOU,
They just
it's
go on
not,
forever.
it's not fantastically clear. As I've said before, sometimes because people aren't paying attention, and sometimes it's because they know what they're doing, so.
Well, it says employees whose wage rate is above the current top step of the employee's job classification. So that's people who have,
Gone through the 7 steps.
no, it doesn't say that. Where does it say that?
What page are you on?
8, or, yeah,
8, little 8?
little 8. Oh, which, you know what was missing from
Yeah.
mine, but I have it now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Pages 8 and 9 are not in here.
So that's the definition of Y rated. So it's only for, I mean, we can double check this, or someone can
Well,
do it,
and-
but it was a,
Yeah, to some extent, this is a board information item.
Right.
There's nothing we can change here. We're trying to bring it to your board because you
but I
expect.
had a long discussion on this,
Right.
because I questioned that myself, because I've been told over and over that after the 6 years, you don't get the step increases. But this was,
And it's true, you do not get the step increases, but then you become Y rated.
no, you don't. Where does it
Alright.
say that
Well, I don't
after
have the
6
page,
years?
so.
Here it is. Here's the definition
But
of Y
was,
rated.
was it in the 325 packet, do you remember?
Well, I got this from her, this missing pages,
Right.
so.
That's why I asked you if it was in the side letter, because I didn't
No,
notice
there
the
it
page.
is.
the
Y
page.
rated, right there. So it's someone whose official, whose pay rate is lower than, higher than the classification. So it's a one person, one time thing, Y rated.
Okay.
No. No, each employee's classification as Y-rated shall not receive a wage increase, but shall receive a lump sum or amount up to the percentage equivalent to the increase in the wage schedules received by other employees. Each employee.
Right, well, it doesn't say.
No, I can see how you can interpret it, what you're saying, Barbara, yes. Whose wage rate is above the current top step of the employee's job, which is theoretically impossible, except for this person.
Right.
Yeah. Okay? And like I said, it wasn't clearly written, so.
No, I think it's confusing, but I did,
Because
I
think
did believe in the
In my email to you, I
explanation.
said, please ask her to explain that.
I know, I spent a long time listening to the explanation, and it made sense to me when I heard it. So,
Okay,
so that one, and then the other one,
then they have the longevity pay, which is, $1,000, 10 to 15 years, 1,500.
but that's not new.
That's not new, but it used to be, if you worked there 20 years, you got 1% of your salary over 20 years plus.
And what she said, and I did not go back and double check this, is that she was surprised at this because she said the previous calculation, for some people, I have it.
It's in the strike version,
Yeah. I
what it
know.
used to be, yeah. And it's-
Well, you'd have to
They
calculate.
got more, well,
Yeah.
top guy there's making 130 grand, so his bonus, his longevity bonus would have been $1,300, and now he's getting 2,500.
Actually, I calculated it, and because we get information on staff over there annually, effective April of every year. I haven't gotten the update for this year yet. However, based upon the hire dates that we have, the longevity pay will be $12,500, whereas before, under the old agreement, or MOU, it would have been only like $3,540. So it's increased the payout by $8,960.
So, and then the final thing, someone had asked, I think Matthew last month asked about the certification pay, so I tried to explain that, So when you run a treatment plant, there's certain grades you have to run certain size and type treatment plants. So I don't know what Sam is, I believe it's a grade 3 is needed to run the plant. Might be a grade 5, but what happens is these guys keep getting their certifications because obviously it helps them if they want to move to another job. It's better to be a grade 5 than a grade 3. So in this MOU, if they get a grade 5, even though they don't need it, they'll be 2 steps above what they need. They'll get a 5% pay increase on top of what they go, even though it doesn't really benefit Sam. The broader point of this, when you guys were talking about wages last month and the 40 or 50 or 60% increase over the past 3 years, this is what drives it. There was a lot of giving. And So, you know,
And
It is what it is.
they're getting holidays now to match Half Moon Bays,
right.
which is a lot of holidays.
And I actually went and looked at Half Moon Bay's, this is the crazy part I always say, I looked at Half Moon Bay's MOU that they signed literally a year ago. And their people at Half Moon Bay got 2.5% raises. I didn't see any step increases in there, which I always, the juxtaposition of, you're sitting on the council handing out 2.5, and then put your SAM hat on and they're handing out more, so it's strange, but anyway, like I said, this is board information, and when you look at what's driving wage increase, that's what it is generally.
Yeah, I certainly agree that a lot of this is written for difficult attempts to understand. What you were just talking about was the vertical over certification pay?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would take issue with, under number 2, the last paragraph as an example of how this works. She's got this person has a Class B driver's license as a maintenance technician 1. That position doesn't require a Class B driver's license, but so she's entitled to an incentive pay of 2.5% for having a Class B driver's license. That is not at all pertinent to the job. I don't get it. What? You know, it's like, hey, I got a certification that, that I know how to make donuts, at the donut college. So I get another, and they call this grade 5. So I'm above my grade level and I ought to get a raise. I don't understand this.
Well, and we deal with this obviously with our operators, but we don't have an MOU. And the guy comes to me and says, I just got my grade 4. And I shake his hand and go, great. Good job. But, it doesn't help us. Now, honestly, generally, sometimes we give them a bump anyway because we are competing with, the public agencies and whatnot, but, you gotta do, so. So again, anyway, this is board information.
Can I just add one last little thing? So, based upon the information that we have, I did the calculations, and they're not exactly right. If anything, ours is under rather than over. But I think it's important to point out that there's actually 12 current employees that are represented under the MOU, and based upon the changes that were made, that will go into effect July 1st, it equals out to be $12,768 per union employee, increased in benefits and wages. So that's pretty
Annually
significant.
for the first year?
Yes, annually just for the first year. And one of the other issues is that, just 4 years ago, there were they had 8.75 employees, but I call it 9, and they're now up to 14 positions, so they've added 5 positions. So in reality, the workload would have essentially gone down since they've added positions to every department.
Yeah, and then there's just little things thrown in that add up over the years to a lot of money, like our page 101D, the vision plan, they added in, and now the vision plan is at no cost to the employee. Next, life insurance, they raised that, more than tripled it.
From 20 to 75,000.
And then the dental plan now is at no cost to the employee. And these may not be per individual high-ticket items, but over the course of the years, this is one of the reasons costs have been going up 20% pretty regularly. Yeah. But at least this one will, and it really will last 4 years, right? Not 3.5, right?
The MOU says 4 years. In Beverly's memo, she said 3.5, but I think their increases
said that's a
stop in
typo.
January 1. Okay. Well, their increases stop in January 1.
Yeah.
But it still goes to June 30.
So the only thing is, I am slightly happy about this is that one, we don't have to hassle with this for another 4 years, and two, it gives us some continuity, so we know this is coming.
All right?
Any other comments or questions? All right.
I just want to say you can expect me to go back with our contract this year. Because we revised ours last year and settled on 3% over, I think, 3 years, so I'll be bringing it back in July.
Yeah, well, that's another effect of this kind of agreement at SAM level, who doesn't raise their own money. All right, we're now down to number 6, consideration of sewer authority Midcoast side fiscal year 2019-2020 general budget and associated resolution. So,
Okay, your board considered this at our last meeting. Matthew, you want to take a 2-minute break so we can print out a sheet for you, for your board?
I move that we take a 2-minute break,
There you go.
2.5 minutes if necessary. Okay, we're back in order.
Okay, so at the last board meeting, your board had to go around for about 45 minutes with the SAM budget as submitted to us. And at the end of the item, you requested additional information from SAM on many of the line items. Barbara kind of led the charge on that issue and worked with Beverly to get this additional information in place. And I don't know, Barbara, do you want to add anything to that?
No.
Okay. So anyway, we've got this breakdown of costs. Now, as I said to you before, you know, the CIP stuff is easier for me to analyze than treatment plant costs, not because I don't know treatment plants, but just because I don't know this specific one. But this spreadsheet was produced by Beverly and sent to us. So what I've tried to do with the color coding is just give you an idea of, you know, kind of big picture, what's happening, how costs aggregate and whatnot. So if you look on that first page under professional services, this is just for the admin side. So there's 2 sides for the most part. So the main budget is SAM. There's the administrative and then there's the treatment side. So from the admin side, that green highlighted numbers are related to the website and to email services and things like that. So Precision IT Consulting does website consulting. You know, there's a couple smaller things. Then you go down to Gov Office, which is the website hosting. Gov Office is actually the company that hosts the website. OpenGov is for $13,000 is another, it's almost an add-on to websites where it's supposed to promote open government by giving people more information. And I say supposed to because it puts it in different graph versions, but you know, I'm not sure it's providing more information, the underlying base information.
And what's the other figure there to the right?
That 44,631 is those green things aggregated, totaled up. So, you know, we're spending $44,000 on the website, basically. You know, I might be wrong on a couple of these smaller items, you know, email, I don't know what Microsoft email services is, but, you know, that's $1,000. You know, the big 3 is Gov Office, OpenGov, and Precision IT Consulting. Then we go further down to the yellow highlighted issues. So Mays and Associates, that's the accounting firm they hired to help with their accounting after their last audit. Up above that, in the yellow, the 24,000, that's Tyler Technologies. So that's the proprietary accounting software they purchased, and they have a yearly license rental for that. So that's $84,000 for those 2 combined for accounting. Then add to that, they've got a technician on staff that basically is just loaded cost is $95,000 to $100,000. So again, totaling that, you're at $180,000 plus or minus for the accounting. keeping moving down, that light blue professional memberships, $25,000. You know, 70, you know, there's nothing you can do really about insurance premiums, they are what they are. Document storage is $7,500 a year. Down further in the blue, you'll have to go to, I aggregated that somewhere. I aggregated that on page 4. So if you keep flipping through the next 3 pages, that light blue is conferences, it's professional memberships on page 3, and it's more conferences. So if you total the memberships and conferences each year, it's $60,000. So going backwards to page 3, again, now we're on the treatment section. You all see that on page 3, with all the yellow? Professional services is one of the largest line items they have in the budget, and it's what your board had asked about last month. So they've got Calcon Systems, who I mentioned last month. They've got $150,000 loaded into here, plus another $65,000 later in the budget. So they're paying Calcon Systems $215,000 a year for routine maintenance, emergency response, and Calcon small projects. I don't know what that is. I don't know why Calcon's doing that. I can't say it's correct or not. It seems like a lot. And remember, Sam's got 3 mechanics on staff, so, you know.
So you don't understand either why some of these 5 employees they've hired in more recent years are doing this?
Right, and I don't want, again, I don't want to unequivocally say it, because I don't know what Calcon's doing and what the mechanics do, but it just seems like a lot. I don't see this in my other treatment plants, I don't see it in other treatment plants I benchmark.
Wasn't there, yeah.
You know, develop catastrophic emergency plan, $75,000, you know, Eaton DFK safety training, $30,000. You know, I don't know what these guys are doing. Sometimes it's just equipment repair and you're buying pumps and pieces and whatnot. You know, Doug Humphrey Consulting for their SSMP audit, that is the sewer system management plan. So we're required to do a sewer system management plan, which basically says, here's what we'll do if a spill occurs, here's our parts and pieces. Every 2 years, you're required to do an audit of it. Now, when we did our SSMP, the SSMP itself, which is a big document, it's 240 pages, it cost us $10,000, $9,500. I don't know why an audit costs $7,500, but, you know, some of this may be more if you all, and Jim and Barbara get, you need to ask these questions, so. Moving forward to page 5, there's the Calcon small products. Where was the one I saw that really, you know, there was something that I look at, and they had like an effluent, I'm trying to see where it is. Develop a backup for the effluent pump, and they just outsource a lot of things. There it is, it's at the bottom of page 5. So it's right there. That's page 5, has the one brown thing. You know, emergency plan for effluent pump outage. I don't know what that means. We have pumps all over the place that are important in our treatment plants, and you develop a contingency plan. You either have a backup pump on the shelf, or you have a quick coupler with a diesel-powered pump or an electrical-powered pump that you can roll up, quick couple on, and that kind of stuff. I don't know why they're paying, has to be an outside consultant to do something with this kind of stuff. So, you know, like I said, this is difficult for me because I look at these, they don't look right, but I can't sit here and say, oh, they're wasting money. Just, the sense I get is that they outsource a lot of stuff that I
This is
don't know.
also the budget, right? I mean, they don't have to spend this. And so,
They don't have to spend this, no,
No,
right,
that's right.
right, so,
This,
right.
this is so they don't have to have the board come in and approve things when they have faces of it.
Right.
Yes.
That's why I can't judge this, but your board asked for the line items. You asked me to try and give an explanation. here it is. We can,
I think it does give us a better sense
Yeah. So,
of where things go.
So-
And Barbara, you did ask Beverly to come tonight, right?
No,
No, you did not, okay.
I asked her if she was coming,
Oh.
and she said no.
So emergency plan for effluent pump outage, what would you,
We did not officially invite
what
her.
would be, if I told you to take a guess, what would you,
We would do it in-house. I don't, that's what I mean. I don't-
okay.
I mean,
So-
this is what we do for a living, we're
Yeah.
experts, so I've got my treatment plant guys and my field guys and my engineer, and, you know, we did this, just did it with our Rancho Santa Fe Golf Course pump station. But guys, when bad stuff happens here, what are we gonna do? You know, can we get a pump and a motor on the shelf, or will they sit there too long, so when you go to use them, they won't run, you know? Now, I'm not an engineer, remember, so, but that's the kind of stuff they look at. That's why we got the Godwin diesel-powered pump. So literally every pump station, we have 18 pump stations. Every pump station we have, you can roll up, it's got a pipe coming out of the wet well, you put that sucker on, and you can pump it various places. You're not gonna cover everything, you know. Every 2 or 3 years, we go, oh, dang, you know, we should have figured that out. But, you know, you're learning as you go. But I don't know who you're hiring, you're the expert. It's like when they did the staffing study for however many dollars, and, you know. I don't do staffing studies. I know how many people I need to run my treatment plants, what I do for a living. So I don't need someone else to tell me, you need this many people. I know how many people, because I've been doing it for 20+ years. So, but, you know, this is how this thing grows. And like Jim says, you know, these are indeed just budget items, but they're, you know,
I guess.
it adds up to a lot.
I guess one of the bigger concerns, though, is a trend that it seems like every time they've taken away a consultant, replaced it with an employee, they ended up hiring another consultant anyways, which was more than the original consultant to begin with. And it seems like that's happened multiple times now. And so, to me, that's the trend that is,
Yeah, well, the poster child is the accountant.
Accountant,
We talked
yeah.
about last
Yeah.
year.
Right.
Right, you know, we don't, again, I didn't wanna send you our org chart for our Temescal Valley Water District thing, but, you know, they've got 8 people there running the sewer treatment plant and the water system and the office and all this kind of stuff. We've got a guy and a half at each of our treatment plants. They're smaller, but a treatment plant is a pretty simple thing. It's got 4 basins with, simplistically, 4 motors in each. So if you got a bigger treatment plant, the basins are bigger and the motors are bigger. But, you know, so they're not so far off. But, you know, I add up my equipment repair for all 4 of my treatment plants, add it up, it doesn't equal this. Now, again, I'm not there, I don't know what's breaking. Maybe Calcon is doing technical work that the mechanics can't do. Usually it's electrical work that these guys do, because a mechanic can't do electrical a lot of times. But, you know, these are just questions to ask, but I think I mentioned this the last thing. You know, at the end of the day, I look at the budget and go, it's 60% increased over the last 3 years. And as I put in one of my memos somewhere, you'd be hard pressed to find somewhere else increase their budget 60% in the past 3 years.
Well, thank you for doing this. It's helpful.
I think the difficult part is sort of balancing the role of one of the major funders of this budget versus not being the ones running this facility. And so, you know, looking at, you know, individual line items is helpful for us to understand and to look at what's happening, but it's really hard to evaluate. You can't really say, well, I think you should reduce the amount you're spending on, you know, this by $10,000, you know. So I think it comes down to management, and I hope that when this comes around next year, there will be a better explanation up front of significant increases in some of the line items. I mean, at this point, I feel like that would be a step forward, so that we would understand better, or be able to say to our ratepayers, yes, we feel confident that the money that we are spending to have, you know, to operate SAM, which is the major expenditure we have, is being well spent. I'm not saying it's not being well spent now, I'm saying that it's very hard for us, at least for me, for the position I'm in, to be able to really look at this critically and say, yes or no. And then certainly say that the costs have gone up considerably. So,
And
I'm
even-
hoping to be able to work on it more even next year and say, let's make sure that changes, significant changes and increases especially are explained.
And even beyond the technical stuff, which is why I highlighted some of the other stuff, you know, the website, the computer web. Again, I don't know all the details, but we're somewhere near 30 grand, 40 grand, whatever the number is to maintain a website. You know, I don't even know what I spent here. You can use GoDaddy and that costs $200 a year to host our website. And, you know, the only latest work we've been doing is the Parks and Rec, and Nancy's been working with my guys that do that, but, you know, are we really spending 30 or 40 grand a year to maintain a website for a treatment plant for JPA, you know? You know, the conferences and the dues for $60,000. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
60 grand for conference, it's just a lot of money. Someone was asking me, well, don't you go to these things? And I always joke, I said, yeah, last time I went to a conference, I met Bill Katke and I got this job. So and I haven't gone since.
You learned your lesson. Yeah, it's, the opacity of what you're presented with is just irksome, because you know that there's gotta be justifications. The price of something goes up 60% from 3 budgets ago. How can that be? And you can't figure it out, you know? And I admit or agree that yeah, these are just numbers, but same things going on for the last 3 years. These numbers turn out to be not enough. We get supplemental requirements to pay. So,
Right, the past 2 years, we've had mid-year budget adjustments, one was 400 grand up for us, all 3 agencies.
And I do want to recognize that there are sections in the proposed budget that do explain the changes. Yeah. It's just whether they really have enough detail to help us understand the proposed changes. I mean, it's not as if there's nothing in here.
Right, but
No.
but that's why I go to the big picture sometimes. Can you explain 60% in 3 years? You know, it seems a little bit, you know, Delia just gave me the warrants from 17, 18. They spent $750,000 with Calcon. Now, I think that might have been related to that whole bus duct
Yeah.
failure and whatnot,
Yes.
so, but,
I'm sure it was.
yeah, because that's a big, big number, but it's just a lot. So, I
mean-
got the information. Don't know what y'all can do with it, but
I mean, I don't think
I should
there's,
say
at this
Barbara got
point,
the information.
I don't think there's much we can do at this point. I mean, I'm ready to approve this budget. I think we need to do that. I would hope that next year, when you see, for example, on each page for under administrative services, it says key changes, and that we could get a little more detailed information there and in the budget line number explanations, so that we would have a better sense. So that's my step forward. It's a small one, but I think it's important for us to do our job in trying to, we're being asked to approve this. So when you're being asked to approve something, you're supposed to look at it and understand it and evaluate it and, you know.
yes.
So,
Yeah, I think for your efforts on this end, it is perhaps a small step, but it's got to be done, and it's really important, because, you know, at some point, we're gonna be facing a Prop 218 rebellion here, when people say, what the hell are we all paying for? You know? item in the agenda mentions an associated resolution. I didn't see an associated resolution in all these papers.
Sorry, I realized, and I had meant to print up the one from last year, and it's changed the date, and I didn't get a chance to do it, so I apologize.
So was that a resolution to approve?
That's our standard resolution to approve.
Okay, but we can do that in May.
Or you could do it now, we've done it before, where your board has said, we approve this budget and the accompanying resolution based on last year's resolution.
Do you see that maybe one of the issues also is that they're kind of one of those agencies that's in between, kind of staffing wise, where they almost need to consider, you know, they're almost outsourcing too many things rather than going to one firm like you guys that could handle a lot of different, you know, items that they're outsourcing to 10 different companies or whatever? I mean, does that have anything to do with it, or the?
I mean, some of the, again, you know, part of the problem, David, is I don't know a lot of the players on this list.
Yeah.
If there were contractors down south, I'd have a better feel for them. You know, we would only provide staffing. I mean, you know, we hire out the technical expertise. You know, these treatment plant electrical systems do get complicated, and you do need outside expertise and things like that. It's more the mindset, once again, you know, this plant ran the same as it's running now 3 years ago, without spending 60% more. So there's an issue there. It's not like the flows, not that it would matter if the flows increase, because that doesn't drive more work. It's just it ran that way. It ran with, I don't know what Gary said, 12 people 8 years ago, or 14 4 years ago, and now we're up to 18 or 19. So, you know, those are the issues. And one of Beverly's memos, she pointed out the only reason that, you know, costs were lower before is because the member agency managers stipulated that they didn't want to hire people, they didn't want to do anything. Well, first of all, we don't stipulate anything. It's not in our power, and I don't think that's unreasonable. You've been running the plant with 14 people for 5 years. Why do you need more? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, personally, I would be happy to make a motion, because I don't want this to come back again.
I was about to ask,
I'm with you.
what is the pleasure of the board? Do we want to
I don't know that there's much more to
pass
say.
the standard
Yeah, sure.
approval resolution
Yes.
without seeing the exact language? I'm not too worried about that.
I'm happy to make that motion. What you say.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the budget as presented with the accompanying resolution to Sam.
Do we have, oh, you seconded it, Jim?
Oh, I can second it, yes.
Yes. Well, the two Sam reps have had enough
It's
of this.
appropriate for us to be the
Yes.
ones to propose it.
Ground them down.
Yeah. Okay, do we have any more discussion? Other than, I want to thank Barbara again for digging
Yes.
into this, and
Thank you.
boy, next year you're going to be on this so much. But, yeah. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes
And-
unanimously.
And Half Moon Bay passed it with very little discussion, unanimous. I don't know what my.
They don't have any discussion at the Sam level either. Item 7, consideration sewer authority mid-coast side report.
Have you had enough? Or?
Yeah, well, I think we just discussed the major items there. So we have, the meeting from March 25th, and we just discussed, the big items there were to discuss the two items we just discussed, the budget and the MOU.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think there's really much.
Ah,
Thank you.
yes, you read it. You already passed it.
Here's my, next time, I'm gonna rip it. I've already complained once.
So, not hearing anything really forthcoming from our SAM reps. And what Jim just said is absolutely true. Those big items were the budget and the MOU, and we just went through those.
I'll just point out that the flow
There you go.
number, which keeps
Yes,
fluctuating, Half Moon Bay is at 55%, we're at 19 now, and Montera's at 24.
Yeah, that's why 50, 30, 20 doesn't,
Oh, see, that makes the other discussion that we've been having
Yes.
interesting.
Moves it in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, that means, wait,
It's got many impacts.
all right. We now move to the consent agenda, which is item 8, approved the March 21st, 2019 GCSD meeting minutes. Item 9, approved the April 2019 warrants. Item 10, approved March 2019 financial statements. And item 11, approved the assessment district distribution number 10-18/19. Do we have anyone who wants to discuss or pull anything for discussion on the consent agenda? Do we have a motion?
come on, somebody else.
Move to approve.
I think, good. Jim seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's consent. Committee reports. Item 12. Anyone have any reports on anything?
I think this is where we were gonna talk about Quarry Park. For a
Oh,
minute. I would like to consider, and maybe
I
we,
think that would be on 13, but we might as well go to 13 because no one.
oh, I thought we were at 13, sorry.
We'll go to 13. No one, no one.
First of all, on 13, I just want to commend the Parks Committee, and particularly Nancy, for the great job on, and Delia, I know she helped as well, on all the materials, the website, the newsletter, and the recreation guide. We should all feel really proud of what they did. It's really great to see that moving forward.
And that is, just so everyone knows, that is up on our website now. They've worked with my guy at Dudek, who I don't like to compliment too much because I'm afraid he'll leave us, so.
They really liked working
Yeah, he's
with him.
really
Yeah.
a great guy, yeah.
So that was my first thing.
Yeah, Chris as well.
It seems that the Quarry Park master plan is stuck. And I wonder if it would help. I mean, I understand that there's discussions behind the scene and we may be setting up a meeting, but would it make sense for us to send a nice polite letter saying, we really would like to see what's in the current plan, number one, because you know, the last meeting at the school, they had changed a whole bunch of things from the previous version, including some stuff that kind of came out of left field, and they got a lot of feedback at that meeting. Supposedly, the plan has been revised and it's sitting on somebody's desk, is what we hear. But the way it's moving forward is people are grabbing people after a meeting and talking about this, you know, and what if we just sent a nice letter from us? Would it make, it seems like it couldn't hurt to say, we are really interested in seeing this move forward. And we'd like to see what's in the current plan and how can it get moving again.
I think so. I think also it would be helpful, I know they had, asked for some more details and kind of legwork on our end. You know, for example, putting together a list of the, resources that we had kind of talked about in terms of saying that we have community members that will, you know, that have done these before and that, you know, that can provide the resources and legwork. So I think if there's any way that we could, I know where that, a lot of that was fleshed out was at the one meeting that got changed from here to the hotel. There's a lot of the people in that room that had worked on, you know, numerous different pump tracks and stuff, and it, you know.
Well,
We
Sam,
could
So-
offer to meet to provide any information that would be useful to
Yeah.
them. I mean,
yeah, because Sam Hertzberg from the county wants to sit down and meet with us to talk about the pump track. And I can't really quite figure out why, but I think we should, because
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he's
absolutely.
adamant about doing it. And, you know, the board has previously
but I want to
said,
see more than that. I don't want to just tell him how much we're willing to contribute to the pump track. Where's the pump track in the plan right now?
Yeah.
We
Right.
don't even know
We
that.
need-
We don't know.
what worries me a little bit about that is, you know, we can't, you know, we sent him a letter, the previous board sent him a letter saying, we're in support of the pump track, we're in
Right.
support of funding the pump track from GCSD to that. I think he's wanting something more concrete, like saying, we will fund the pump track no matter what it costs, and I just.
Yeah, I think
board
that's the
can't
part.
do it, yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, I think we should put a nice letter out urging them to get off the dime.
And tell them we'll meet with them to discuss
And we'll,
specifics
yeah,
about
we'll
our
meet to
potential
discuss the
support.
specifics and reiterate our commitment to funding, but we'd like to know what we're funding and how much.
And I'd like
You
to
know,
throw out
let's get it.
another radical idea, which is that we might want to contribute if there's going to be a dog park. There's an awful lot of support for that. Like, I'm not saying, I'm not putting it, saying it, I want to do it here, but I think we might want to talk about that, because that's another item that might be on hold, and there's a huge amount of community support for.
Was there a dog park in the last
Not the last one,
iteration?
but the ones before it
Yeah.
was. And so the last one, though, things got moved around based on not a whole lot of input, and things disappeared. So maybe they've gone back to the one before, but could we at least know what the current proposal looks like? And what would they like from us? You think a nice letter would be okay? I don't wanna rock the boat, but I also think sometimes if you send a letter, official letter, it gets it on the record that we really care about this more than having
Well,
phone calls.
we copy the suits.
Yeah.
So you should go to Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd
Yeah.
be very,
Yeah, copies of the suits, or at least ours,
Right, yeah.
because that's where the real,
power is.
yeah, the ability to poke the beast and get it moving. Yeah.
Okay.
So, who can draft a really nice
That was
letter?
gonna be my next question.
Oh, I can work with Delia, and maybe give her if I do.
Yeah, okay.
You know, somebody else can see it. I
Just
mean,
give us-
I'm not looking at anything controversial. I'm just looking to say, hey, we just want to be on the official record. We really care about this, because somebody's pushing the other plans that have bumped it. Because it was moving right along, and then it just like,
Okay,
Probably funding.
so we all in agreement on that?
Are we? All right, that's the sense of the board.
All right.
Thank you. Now, item 14, attorney's report. No report. No, that was 14. Item 15, general manager's report.
Nothing further?
Item 16, administrative staff report.
I just wanted to give you an update on the homeless encampment on
Yes.
the property. I actually had to go to the substation, which I did on Monday, and the person I was originally dealing with handed it over to a detective, Pitts, and I spoke with her extensively on Monday, and she was going to go over and talk to the inhabitants and asked if they would voluntarily leave. I asked her to contact me when she had contact with them, and she has not contacted me since I was at the substation, and my assumption is that she has not been able to actually have contact with them. I tried to reach her today, but she was not in, so I am going to continue to try and reach her to follow up. But apparently, if they do not leave voluntarily, we will have to go through some eviction process, which I don't know what that entails exactly. But I hope to get more information once we find out if that's the case. And hopefully it won't be, but we'll see.
Are we gonna communicate that to them?
Well,
Because that could be maybe the solution, saying, listen, we are gonna have to.
Well, I think
Sure.
she will be, talking to them about that. That she implied what I gathered from my discussion with her is that she would be letting the people know that the owners are asking them to leave, and that we would, if they didn't do it voluntarily, we would do what needed to be done, basically, to have that happen.
And so they're just gonna go to the Caltrans property. I mean, that's where it's like.
Well,
But
I
yeah, did
did let her know that there is one person that is technically on Caltrans, but it does affect it's
Yeah.
affecting impacting our side of the property as well,
Yeah.
so, as far as the cleanup and stuff that might be
Yeah.
necessary for that.
For sure.
Okay, thank you. We have an engineer's report. And
John is moving forward on all the items listed on the report. We are in the middle of doing the CCTV reported on last month, so that should be done by the end of the month, and we've identified a bunch of what we think are possibly problematic sewers that we're going to CCTV, and that will be incorporated into the final 6-year CIP. And by the way, the reason we're doing a 6-year CIP instead of a 5-year CIP is because we're going to bundle a couple of years like we did last time, hopefully get a little economy of scale for the construction cost.
I have a question and a comment. Perhaps, Chuck, you can address this question. The first one, Medio Creek Crossing at Marauder Road. The temporary system will remain in operation until a permanent solution, ... is implemented. What does it take to make this decision on which solution we're going to do? And let's make that decision.
Well, what it takes to make that final decision would be getting the easement from state parks.
So essentially, the decision's made if...
We've made, your board
Yeah.
has directed us to go do this project, so the critical path is the state parks easement.
Yeah, having worked with state parks,
Well, I told you last time, they're for them humming along.
yes, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the good news.
You got a response in 3 months?
Right.
Wow, yeah.
Well, John's retired, so he can bird dog him a little better.
Oh, good.
Semi-retired, I should say.
So have we made, my comment is on the second item, we have made the decision that we want to move all our lines away from the creek. We don't want to cross that creek with any of our lines.
We will not be crossing that creek one way or the other.
Right, okay,
In a year or two, something like that.
yeah. Good, because that, yeah. You know, that bridge that they put up, it didn't last for it, the new bridge?
No, it was shocking to me.
Yeah, it didn't last very long,
When
and
John
that-
told me that, I went, what?
yeah. So I think really the only, as he says, permanent solution is to avoid going across that creek,
Right.
so.
For any
yeah.
number of reasons, even if the bridge lasts, you don't want to pipe over the creek, so.
Yeah. Oh, and there's also the, county is studying how much they're gonna charge us to, build a slightly bigger bridge to hold our pipe if we wanted to keep it on there. So we're not a bridge building agency. So, all right.
Can do you know anything further on the storage tank?
Oh,
Status
glad
of
you
storage
reminded me.
tanks.
Yes, I do. I circulated an email.
Out here?
Yeah, so they did get this, and Bill, maybe I'll Bill report on this, so they did get some progress under the coastal development permit, so they got approval
From the, they call it zoning, they got the zoning approval. And so that starts an appeal period. There's an internal county appeal period, but someone could always appeal that to the coastal commission. And that appeal period begins to run when they file what's called a final local action notice, or FLAN, as it's commonly known. And once they file that with the coastal commission, then that starts any appeal period to the coastal
How long
commission.
is the,
It's 10 business days from the filing of the FLAN.
and it's relatively expensive to appeal it at coastal commission?
No, it's free.
What's free?
It's always free. And in fact, if a local agency charges a fee for their appeals, you don't even have to go through, exhaust all your appeals at the local agency and go directly to the commission.
Well, I can't see any reason why anyone would, but,
Yeah.
okay, well, moving along.
Moving along to construction in June.
2020.
Well, and I hate to even bring this up, but remember your board approved the easement, because they still don't have an easement from us. So your board approved the easement in February, I sent it off to Sam back then, haven't heard anything from them, so,
It was on the agenda, was it on the agenda?
No.
No?
well, maybe 5 months ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they talked about it, but, yeah.
I don't know why.
Okay.
Well, there's no reason to wait. That's so if you all are talking about it and it comes up, we've done our job, like we did in October of last year. There's no reason to wait. What I don't wanna see happen with the most I thought with Rondai is they get all this stuff done and they go, oh wait, we don't have the easement. And like you're talking about, and then look at the easement and then did it, so.
Yeah, but the design's all done and approved and, right?
Right, the easement is 95% complete, they've just gotta do a couple things, so. But we've done our things.
Okay, let's go to the final item, future agenda items. Would anyone like to add to the list?
Let's keep the Quarry Park on the list somehow, just as required. And
Okay, well, we just call it Quarry Park.
yeah,
Well, we
or
can
status or something.
remove Sam general budget. We are waiting on the audited financial statements, we're waiting on Sam, because they've not completed their audit. Then we will see the district budget in May. And the other stuff is ministerial.
The last current item on here, the ordinance code revision, that sounds kind of scary to me, like I see a, meeting until dawn. How are
The
you?
good news is Leonard's no longer here, so
How do you,
at least it'll end at dawn.
yeah, how do you envision doing this? Are we gonna be presented with our entire ordinance code? And,
Well, we talked, the ordinance code scares me as well, Matthew, which is why. And poor Jonathan wanted it done before he left, and we couldn't get it done. So, we're gonna have to look at it. We could give it in pieces. There are some kind of finite pieces we could break it up into. The reality is a lot of this stuff, again, is ministerial. So, you'll have some stuff, but a lot of it's EDU assessment, connection fees, it's just legal stuff, so, it shouldn't be that detailed. Should bring it home.
so, I should give up my standing practice of trying to read everything?
I would not recommend it.
Okay.
What I'll do is when I bring it to you, I'll point out maybe some of the broader policy decisions you'll have to make, but you don't have to read them. Color coded.
Okay,
Can't promise that.
all right, I think that
Okay.
ends this meeting. Thank you all. What time we got? Almost
I
10.
think maybe we have to think about going